This is Newsmax TV. I'm Ashley Martella. President Obama tells Senate advocates of climate change legislation to include a carbon emissions cap in the bill. Here to discuss that and other matters with us now is the top Republican on the Environment and Public Works Committee, Oklahoma Senator Jim Inhofe. Senator, nice to speak with you again.
Nice to be back with you, Ashley.
Obama obviously wants full cap and trade, or cap and tax as Republicans like to call it, in that bill. Now, is that a deal killer?
Well, it is. And, you know, Ashley, it's been a killer now for a year. They just don't know it. They're still in denial. They had a meeting just a few days ago in the White House inviting a bunch of the moderate Republicans. I wasn't invited, obviously, to try to sell them on the idea of some type of a restriction on CO2. Well, they can call it anything they want, but it's cap and trade is cap and trade. And these guys all know now, even the more mushy Republicans who used to be hard for me to deal with, now all realize that cap and trade would constitute the largest tax increase in the history of America. And they realize that. So, but this is the strategy. If you're listening carefully on this, I want to make sure our people are following this. What their strategy now is, toward the end of the year, we're coming up now not too far from the August recess, to pass some kind of benign energy legislation. It doesn't matter what it is. Then they can throw it into conference with Waxman and Markey. Then, after we have all of our victories in November, have a lame duck session and bring it up at that time. I think that's what their strategy is right now, and I don't think it'll work because those individuals who are going to be defeated would be voting on this, and that's one of the reasons they're defeated. Interesting, isn't it?
There's talk of a compromise, reportedly including Maine's Olympia Snow, that would target only electric power plants for an emissions cap. Now, if that ever passed, would it, in Obama's own words, necessarily cause utility bills to skyrocket?
Oh, sure. See, that's the point. That no matter what they put the tax on, ultimately it's the people who are listening to us right now who are going to pay. And again, the cost is going to be huge. We're talking about in the neighborhood of $300 billion, which translates to each tax-paying family, about $1,500 a year, and you don't get anything for it. So that's just one more thing, and I have to say that our moderate to liberal Republicans all understand that now, and they're not going to be fooled. It was a good try, but it didn't work.
You've said repeatedly that cap and trade is dead in the Senate, yet senators like Kerry and Lieberman keep pushing it. Why do you think that is? Do they really think they have a shot at ramming it home?
No, they don't. My feeling is, and I know this subject pretty well because I've been doing this now for 8 years. It was 8 years ago that I said it was the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people. The people right now, like John Kerry, they're trying to keep ingratiated with the far left environmental extremists, the Hollywood elites, you can call them anything you want. They're the ones, the MoveOn.org, the George Soros, the Michael Moore, they pump the money into all these campaigns. So they, along with Obama, are trying to keep themselves ingratiated with that group. And to do it, they have to keep trying to act like there's still some hope that we'll get cap and trade. Now, again, it's not going to happen. I think in their own minds they have to know that, but nonetheless, if so, they're just in denial.
Lieberman says some lawmakers, he didn't name any, are now willing to consider some carbon emissions provisions. Are you seeing any defections in the ranks?
No, none whatsoever. Here's the problem that you have. Anytime you deal with carbon, I think a lot of people listening to us right now would say, well, no, wait a minute. If they want to cut carbon and all this cap and trade's got people confused, let's just put a tax on carbon. Well, the reason they don't do that, Ashley, is because then people would know how much it's costing them. The whole reason for using cap and trade, this goes back to the McCain-Lieberman bills, all these bills where they tried to pass this stuff. The whole reason for cap and trade is to masquerade how much it would cost the people so that nobody would know. In fact, they'll say, we'll pick winners and losers. And congratulations, Ashley, you're a winner, but everyone else is a loser. That's been their strategy. It hasn't worked, but they haven't given up.
Senator Inhofe, turning to something else you and many others are very concerned about, the possibility of Obama granting amnesty to millions of illegal aliens by executive order. Now, the Department of Homeland Security denies this. You and some other Republican senators sent a letter to Obama stating your opposition to it. You were also quoted as saying on a Washington Times blog that at the time the letter was sent, Obama was either in the process of doing this or has already done it.
Well, I think in the process of doing it is probably still accurate, Ashley, but let's make sure people understand what we're talking about. Under executive order, you can withhold a you can stop an illegal from being deported if there's a special case, in other words, a terminal illness or something where that one individual, the president does have the power by executive order of stopping that individual from or reversing a deportation action. Now, what we understand he was going to try to do was to take a whole block of them, maybe 1,000 or 100,000, and try to treat them all this way so that they can stop the deportation of illegals. It's just a way of accomplishing their agenda that they tried unsuccessfully to do through the legislature. It's kind of the same thing as when they tried unsuccessfully on the global warming, on the cap and trade, then they tried to do it through the EPA and the Clean Air Act. So they're trying to take everything over by the executive in accomplishing their goals.
Senator Jon Kyl claims that Obama told him that if he secured the border, that would remove the incentive for comprehensive immigration reform. Now, Kyl says Obama is holding border security hostage to amnesty. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Look, I was elected with Jon Kyl. He and I were elected the same year to the House. We came to the Senate from the House the same year. He's one of my closest friends. He's never told a lie. And so it's kind of his word against the Obama administration. To me, that's an easy call.
Senator Inhofe is also a member of the Armed Services Committee. Turning now to Afghanistan, the new commander, General David Petraeus, says he wants to review the rules of engagement to make sure U.S. troops aren't handicapped on the battlefield. What handicaps might there be and who's responsible for them?
Well, I think we all know, and everyone who's listening to us right now has found how repugnant it is to suggest that we'd have to read Miranda rights to people on the battlefield. And right now, with this administration, the rules of engagement are influenced by the White House, so that they're trying to treat these people as if this is a war. This is not a war. The people who are the terrorist detainees, that's the big issue, about Gitmo. These people are not entitled to any of our rights, so they have been encumbered. However, that's the bad news. The good news is, and I really did like McChrystal. He was a great guy. He was a little naive in saying some things off the record, in my opinion, and it came back to haunt him. But David Petraeus, there's no greater hero in America today. I'd put him up against any of the present or past generals and leaders, and he is the perfect person to carry what he successfully did in his surge in Iraq, using whatever is necessary to make the same thing happen in Afghanistan. So part of that is going to be an agreement that he has. I don't know what it is. He sat right here where I'm sitting in my office just the other day for over an hour. We talked about this, but I think when the president talked him into taking on this position, he had to make some concessions. This is me talking now. This is my suspicion. And one of them would be, you're going to have to get your hands off and let me do it, Mr. President, because we can't win it if we have to second guess the White House every time we take an action. So I think we got the right person in there doing it. And I would almost say this: if David Petraeus can't execute a successful surge, no one can.
General Petraeus suggests that infighting between U.S. military officials and civilian officials responsible for Afghanistan policy will end. Senator, how serious is that infighting, and is that affecting military operations in the theater?
Well, I could mention Holbrooke and all these guys. I don't need to do that. I just think that probably the arrangement that David Petraeus had was, I don't have to listen to these guys and fight with your civilians in the field. Just give me the authority. David Petraeus is not going to do this job unless he has the unfettered authority from the White House to get it done. And I think very likely one of the problems that McChrystal had is he had all of these appointees by President Obama who really were disrupting things. And I think that is a thing of the past. Hopefully that's the case. Again, I want to make it real clear, Ashley, that this is just my impression. I'm not quoting anything that Petraeus said, because that would not be that. I would not do that.
Oklahoma Senator Jim Inhofe, as always, it's been a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.